Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Welcome to Cinema Club.
Yes, welcome to Cinema Club. As in the movie, we are finally finishing up the Scream franchise. This is a horror movie podcast, of course. We get together, we talk about a horror movie. It's the Octoberthon. It's the month of October 2020. And we're doing a bunch of movies. We're using this month especially to do a lot of sequels, to finish off some franchises, continue one or two that are still ongoing. And one of the ones we're finishing off here is Scream, with Scream 4, of course, being the newest one, although they are working on Scream 5, so we will have a new one at some point. But it's kind of interesting how long it's taken us to do this franchise, because we did the first one in Octoberthon 2 years ago. We did get Scream 2 done kind of randomly between, it was like a March or something. And then Scream 3 we did last Octoberthon, and then I think because we've been having trouble, we've had so many new movies to do, try to fit in all these sequels to these other long franchises. I was like, you know what? There's only one more Scream. We'll put it in the next Octoberthon and just round it all off with one last go. So this film, of course, came out in 2011. We'll start spoiler free as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we go into spoilers. This is the fourth one in the franchise, obviously, as the four would indicate. I don't know why I'm telling you that. The point I'm trying to get to, though, is that it's kind of separate from the other three, and that the other three were all released very quickly. Scream 1 was like 96, Scream 2 was like, I think the very next year at 97, they rushed that out. And then the third one was like 2000, so it took a little bit longer, but it was still very much in the same kind of era, right? And then Scream 4, even though it's now been 9 years, it's almost a decade since Scream 4 came out. Scream 4 is actually a nostalgia sequel. It was one where, 10 years later after the last one, we're going to go back and do another one. American Pie did this, it's not a horror movie, obviously, but American Pie did the same thing with American Reunion. We're seeing a lot of other franchises, do it. Terminator's done it a couple of times where it keeps trying to bring it back. Yeah. But this was like, no, we're doing Scream 4. We're going to do like a nostalgia-based one.
I think like the one thing, though, is it does kind of fit with the meta nature of the series, like especially since this was like the time where you're ripe with like horror remakes and stuff, which actually I like. This is I like when movies do just have like a simple numbering system, but I feel like this is the one time you could have gotten away with like just calling it Scream again, and just to kind of play on that like like reboot kind of nature of it.
Or Scream Again, or Scream Back, or Scream some other like some sort of gimmicky thing. I agree. It does incorporate that. This is a year after the Nightmare remake. It's 2 years after the Friday the 13th remake. We're right deep into the tail end of the prime time of remaking everything. I think 2005 to 2010, give or take, are really that. Like everything, all the classics were being remade more or less in that time span. Actually, a bit earlier because Texas Chainsaw was 2003, but basically that decade. So I mean, this one's interesting because it's much later. Wes Craven is here. In fact, this may have been was this the last movie Wes Craven directed?
I believe it is.
Yeah, so this was kind of his final feature film before he passed away a few years later. He passed away in 2015. So obviously I went to see this in the theaters. In fact, this is the only Scream I saw in theaters because I was far too young to see the other ones when they came out. And notably, is this the only Wes Craven movie I saw in theaters? Let me double check that.
You didn't see Red Eye in theaters?
I didn't. Yeah, because after Scream 3, all he had was Cursed. We'll get to that one day. Red Eye, My Soul to Take, and that's Scream 4. That was, that's everything from then on. So I would have been old enough to see Cursed and Red Eye, probably, but I mean,
you don't need to.
I don't need to, yeah, exactly. So, and My Soul to Take, I don't remember hearing anything.
I can't even picture that.
So, so this is the only Wes Craven movie I ever saw in theaters. Obviously, I didn't know it'd be his last one when I saw it, but it's worth mentioning. I haven't seen this since that year. This is my first time seeing this in 9 years. I don't know about you.
I mean, I definitely saw it in theaters, and if I had watched it since then, it maybe like one time, after it came out or something. But I don't think I've seen it that many times. I mean, to the point where, I really didn't remember anything about it. Like, I remembered a few of the people that was in it, and then I remember the reveal of the killer at the end, but that was about it.
Yeah, a lot of it for me, it kind of faded in memory. And there's people in this I didn't even realize were in it. From like Britt Robertson's in here as in a small role, and she went on to be in Tomorrowland, and I quite like that movie. It doesn't get a good rap on the internet, but I actually quite like that movie. And I was like, because I do remember like being introduced to Emma Robertson in this, and because I remember when it came out, they said, oh, one of the new lead characters is Julia Roberts' cousin or niece, whatever their relation is.
I want to say niece. Yeah, I'm not sure.
And what's funny though, obviously years later, is that I've come to love Emma Roberts through Scream Queens and through her, the Black Coat's Daughter and some of her other work since then. So it's kind of funny going back and watching it now, having an opinion on her and caring that she's here. So interesting. There's some cameos as well early on in the film, like Kristen Bell like pops up like very briefly. So really interesting that it's a nostalgia sequel about Scream, because it's kind of like. It's because Scream kind of like came into my life right at the start of my horror like awakening. It was like right at that age where I started to discover horror movies. It was contemporary at the time, whereas all the other big horror movies were all older. It was all stuff from the 80s, from before I was born or whatever. Scream was this contemporary thing, so there was kind of like a weird thing for me when Scream 4 came out, where this is a nostalgia sequel to something I grew up with. That and at the time, 2011, I was what, 22 when this came out, give or take. So I felt kind of weird that I was getting to that point where stuff that I grew up with was now this nostalgia thing, and I've obviously gotten used to that since, because like Power Rangers got a new movie a few years ago and stuff like that. But so that was kind of interesting. And then of course, because it's a meta film and there's all these remakes, you know they're going to play with that. So that was kind of an interesting thing to look at going into it, to see how that was going to play out. So. And this is actually kind of the one that feels the most like the first one, just in the sense that they're back in Woodsboro. They're back in the small town. They're probably referencing more things from the first film. I mean, maybe not more, because the third movie literally had a movie set of recreating like parts of the first film. But you know what I mean? Like, if it feels more like it's trying to be like the first one to an extent. But we'll get into it all. But we're in spoiler free still, so no worries about spoilers. We've got the old cast, we've got the new young cast, with all these things. So I guess I'll ask the question, Tim. How did you feel rewatching and rediscovering Scream 4?
So I don't know if this is controversial, because I'm not really sure what the kind of general consensus on this movie is. I feel like I've seen both people kind of standing up like on both ends on it. Like I've seen people like, oh no, like I hate it, and other people, oh no, I love it. But I gotta say, I am on the I love it camp. I actually thought this was great, and especially after
we got space. Someone get out the war, because there's some spacey hot takes coming in here.
No, I think it's like super fun, and and I don't know if I don't think I necessarily felt the way when it first came out, but I think maybe going back and re-examining it like in this modern lens, and maybe having some time away from from it, where it's not like, oh man, this just seems like weird nostalgia sequel. It's like, oh no, I think it actually does fit fairly well with the franchise, and especially when we did like 2 and 3, I just really did not like those like at all. like this I feel like was much more my speed. I liked the characters. I liked like I thought I had some fun kills. I liked the I still feel with like pretty much every like Scream movie, I always feel like they can go further with the meta nature of it. Like I feel like it never really fully satisfies me on that end, but I do like the a lot of the ideas they present in this, with the like idea of like reboots, and trying to go back and like with the original outdoing it, to the point where it seems like they're almost trying to like recreate some stuff and then kind of flip it on its head. I don't know, I just think it's a lot of fun. I was surprised, because I wasn't really sure where I was gonna stand, and especially after just really not liking any of the other sequels. I think this is easily the best sequel. Like I don't even think that's like, for me, it's not even like a contest. But
that is
that's where I
interesting.
stand.
I don't think I was expecting such a strong feeling.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not saying it's like the best movie ever. It's amazing, but I think in terms of a franchise that I'm not like super into, I was surprised at how much it worked for me.
What's interesting is that when I went to see it originally, I remember coming out of it thinking that it was probably the best sequel. I didn't necessarily feel as strongly as what you just said, but I hate 3, so being better than 3 was not a challenge. Like, I despise 3. I think it's such a dull ass movie.
I think most people do. I think 2 kind of has its defenders, but I don't know. I'm really not a fan of 2.
I mean, 2 is better than 3. I think there's
better than 3 for sure.
There's some merit in 2. I think what's interesting watching this again, and there was definitely something I felt at the time as well, to sort of get to my like overall opinion, is that I think it's kind of a mixed bag of a movie. It's kind of weird because there's some ideas in here that I really like. There's some moments that I like, some sort of meta jokes that I like, but at the same time, I had this feeling watching it originally, and then again watching it now, and this did not change at all, is that I feel like the actual horror elements are phoned in. I feel like Wes Craven just didn't care anymore about actually making a suspenseful like kill scene. Like every single time it does like someone's on the phone or someone's being stalked, it feels like it's almost rushing through it, which is funny because the movie's actually almost 2 hours long. It's like an hour 50. It's it's a little bit on the long side for a movie like this. Maybe not compared to other Scream though. I remember complaining that Scream 2 and 3 were also too long, but so I do feel like it kind of like misses because even though Scream had its meta humor, it definitely did. It still kind of treated like the opening scene, for example, as this long suspenseful build to what was going to happen, and this movie kind of just doesn't really care about doing that at all. And obviously the characters from the original film at this point feel like they have so much plot armor because they're the main characters and they don't want to kill any of them off. That you have that kind of thing going. And I also do think it maybe has like a little bit of a struggle juggling its new cast and the old cast, because it wants to feel like Scream 1 by having all these teenagers, and it wants to have the old characters back as well. It's trying to almost Force Awakens, the Scream franchise in a weird way. I don't know if it ever quite juggles how many characters it has successfully. And obviously we love having a lot of people because it means we can kill a lot of people in a movie like this.
Yeah.
But I think the problem is that I don't know if it ever quite really solidifies who its main character is. Like, it feels like it doesn't know who we're following, bizarrely.
See, the thing is, I kind of... It's hard because I kind of want to... I don't necessarily say I want to disagree with you, but I want to kind of talk about it and bring some ideas into that, but I can't really do that without going into spoilers.
Yeah. And honestly, my biggest critique of this, but honestly, it's an easy watch, right? It's not tedious to watch like 3. I think it's much more easy to watch. I think some of the side character jokes almost feel like they're just from a full-on comedy rather than a horror movie with humor, anymore. So I think that's the thing, but I'm thinking the cops specifically.
Those cops are like weirdly out of place in this movie.
Yeah, Anthony Anderson and the dude from the OC.
Adam Brody.
Adam Brody, there you go. Also from the new Shazam movie as well. Those feel a little bit out of place. Honestly, though,
it's not as bad as like the cops in Last House on the Left.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Wes Craven joint.
But yeah, it's so weird that Wes Craven has this out of place cop mechanic. Honestly, though, I think my biggest problem with Scream 4 is that there's a thing towards the end that it sets up once it's revealed the killer, right? And I felt like when I watched this movie for the first time, I got really excited that it was because I thought it was about to do something really ballsy. I thought it was actually going to do something, and then it kind of chickened out of it in the last 5-10 minutes. I'm like, no, do the thing that was being presented to me, because if they actually ended it like that, I was going to be like, yes, this movie has balls, and I love it, and I love what it's just done. Instead, it kind of just goes for a more generic, which again had more weird comedy, which I'll get to in spoilers, but
yeah. No, I get what you're saying, but I kind of like where it ends up going. I do think a big problem with the Scream franchise overall is like you're talking about like some of the kills and stuff. Like I guess there's some like decent enough like gore or whatever, but like the I think one of the things I don't love about this series in general is just like, I don't know, like most of the kills, they just always just end up kind of coming down to people getting stabbed most of the time, you know? Like,
yeah, they're not that exciting, and this intentionally tries to make them feel a bit more brutal, but they're not actually that interesting, I don't think, overall.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, I think that's fair. There's also a couple of things that it kind of like, I guess they're supposed to be red herrings, but there's a couple of things that it sets up that it kind of don't really become anything.
Sure.
And they feel really out of place when you think back at the end and go, wait, why was that scene
like
there?
That like that like weird, well, not weird, but like that female police officer
the
that's
deputy,
like,
yeah, who's like really into doing, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of pointless.
There's a whole scene where she's like really sinister in the shadow when she's talking to Sydney, and I'm like,
yeah,
are they setting up her as like a potential killer or something? And by the time we get to the end, I'm like, there was like no payoff one way or the other to that. It was just there randomly. It was weird. I don't know. It was like, well, why was that scene there where she was like super menacing? It'd be one thing if one of the running things is that Sydney's like not trusting anyone. So there's like lots of characters who talk to her where she's really suspicious of them. But it was just her. Yeah. For some reason, just her had this really weird scene where she's like, oh, I mean, I'm so mysterious and potentially evil. Yeah. But yeah, so yes, obviously we have Courtney Cox and David Arquette back as well. They're still their characters. Not much to really say. There's an interesting touch with Courtney Cox sort of being past their prime and trying to recapture who she was. It makes me wonder what they're going to do in Stream 5, given that they've already done kind of the, like, what these characters are older. Now it's been another 10 years. Like we're going to see these characters. It's just so funny. Like, Sydney's going to have been gone from like a teenager to someone in her mid to late 40s by the time Scream 5 comes out. It's just really funny to me.
Do we know if Scream 5 is that being written by Kevin Williamson, or is it the?
I think it's the Ready or Not people. I mean, maybe Kevin Williamson's also co-writing, but I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. I think it's really like a passing of the torch where it's just a completely different creative force for the first time. Because Kevin Williamson, as far as I know, wrote or at least had a hand in writing all of them, right? I mean,
I think, yeah, because I mean, he definitely wrote this one, and then I think he wrote all the other ones.
He definitely wrote one, obviously. The only one that I'm questioning is 3, and 3 was so shit that maybe someone else wrote it, but
I could explain it.
I don't know. So it is what it is. So there are definitely moments I like though. But it's almost like the characters that they introduced that I like. I'm annoyed that I didn't get enough of them because it was divvying up so much time between so many characters that I would have liked more of some of these younger characters that were likable.
Yeah, I mean, I think they actually like are all pretty, it's a pretty good cast. Like I like the, I guess kind of like the two nerd like a movie like loving characters. Like I don't know, I could definitely seen more of them, and like like Emma Roberts and her friend Kirby, was like that was good, but it definitely does kind of suffer from. Yeah, there's like so many characters that I don't know. I guess maybe it's not a huge complaint because I do kind of like all of them, so it doesn't really. I guess it's not too much of a bother that you kind of going back and forth between them, but yeah, maybe it would have been better to see more of some people.
Yeah, just they actually come up with some good characters. It would just have been nice to like get some more of them. As far as anything else goes, I will say I do appreciate like. At one point later in the film, there's characters watching Stab, the first Stab movie, which is the movie that in Scream 2 is like based on the book that Gail wrote. That's like just the story of Scream. So you see it's Heather Graham playing the Drew Barrymore part, and we get this like sort of knockoff version of it. I did kind of like seeing that again because it felt kind of cool to sort of like that's a consistent thing in this world now. These Stab movies exist, and having these characters in Woodsboro watching it. I thought it was kind of interesting to see because I think there was even a couple of snippets that we hadn't seen before from Scream 2. They had a couple of extra shots of like some of that stuff that because obviously we only saw such a limited amount of it because it's just like clips when they're watching it in the theater. I thought a little interesting.
Yeah. I liked it.
Yeah, so I'll give it that. But it definitely feels like it's less of a horror movie because there's so many characters to pack in that there's very little time for actual suspense at any point, and that's something that I think the original Scream still had time for. So if I'm critiquing it, I'd critique it for that for sure. So I'm not as positive on you, but I'll talk about some of the things I like in spoilers because I think they're all spoilerous stuff for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, though, I think it is just kind of like an easy watch, like where like I don't think there's really anything that like. Well, I think there's stuff that could have been better. I don't think there's necessarily anything that made me mad in the movie versus 2 and 3 where they're like, not that like those movies, like I mean 3 is pretty bad, like 2 it does have like some good stuff and some merit, but like still there's like a lot of stuff that kind of irked me, whereas this, even though it is kind of long, I think it is like a nice enough watch, and I think it kind of helps now that like there's some time to it, so like there are like people in the movie that like maybe didn't really know too much about back then, but it's like, oh hey, that's cool to see this person show up, and like looking back on it now, like maybe it might not have like appreciated maybe some of the angles and stuff that they're going for, but I don't know, it's I was happy it kind of worked for me, at least I think better than probably the last time I watched it.
I will say this, it's getting a full extra point at the end for not revolving around Maureen Prescott. I hated everything they kept adding to that backstory. That
sure.
I mean, that's one of the things. It's one of the reasons why I hate 3 so much is how much they add into that stupid backstory of Maureen Prescott. So I was so delighted that was not a big factor. They do retcon that she had a sister, so that she's got this niece. Sydney's, Emma Roberts plays her niece or cousin rather, her cousin. But
it doesn't necessarily have to be like, maybe not like a retcon, just be like, oh well, we never mentioned her before, but
sure. I mean, if it's a bit weird that we never knew she had a sister, given that I don't know, but who's played by Mary McDonnell, which is cool from Battlestar Galactica, which is nice. But I will say this, like outside of the fact that Gail at one point says that I've helped solve these crimes 3 times, like Scream 2 and 3 don't have to exist. Like this movie functions completely if Scream 2 and 3 never happened.
Oh sure.
Outside of that one reference, and I guess maybe the fact that the Stab movies exist, but they could still exist without Scream 2 existing.
Yeah. Which, like, I don't know, maybe might have not been intended at the time, but I mean, it kind of works now in this age where we have so many, like, sequels that are just, sequel to, the first movie or whatever.
Because, she comes back to the town, it's the anniversary of the town's murders. The fact that it happened again at college and then, on this movie studio, like, again, is almost irrelevant throughout the whole movie. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's all about the original murders. It's all about what happened back then. Scream 2 and 3 are basically irrelevant. You could totally just show someone Scream 1 and 4 and it would completely work and make sense. I guess aside from the fact that, I mean, I guess, like, Dewey and Gale being more of a couple is something that was more developed in the sequels, but it was still hinted at in the first one, so I mean, it would still function. So I think we'll give the spoiler warning so we can get into everything that goes on in the movie, unless there's something else you want to.
Well, no, I just thought of something. I was like, I wonder if they were divorced in real life at this time.
I think they were. I think they were already divorced by Scream 4. So
it's awkward.
It's kind of funny that they're both coming back for Scream 5, so they've actually been divorced longer than when they were married, which is just really funny.
Wow.
So, hey, which is funny because this time they've probably not seen each other since I mean, I don't know. Maybe they're still friends. I have no idea. But there's a reason.
One of them is.
That was a terrible joke.
Oh, come on, that was good.
That was a terrible joke. Terrible. Okay, so I will thank the Patreon producers. Obviously, the verbal list that I'm about to say out is only relevant at the time that we recorded this. The list at the end of the video will be up to date for October, but we're recording this in August. So thank you to Alison M. Fordyce, Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Short, Board Now, Zammer Jammer, Al Tribesman, Christopher Moy, and Brett Williams. Thank you to you all. They are all Patreon producers at the $20 or above tier. But you can, of course, support us for as little as $1 per month over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and get yourself a bonus episode every single month for that $1. At the $5 tier, you also get voting rights once per month and early access to all the episodes by one day. So go and have a look and see if you're interested in any of that. And of course, you can support us for free. If you're on YouTube, hit the like button and leave us a comment. Those are very important as well, and they help more people find us. So please do any of that. So thank you very much, and we will continue with this review. Full spoilers for Scream 4 from this point on. So this is going to like yes.
Oh no, I'm just gonna say I'm surprised that like I still let the opening surprise me, even though like
you've seen it before.
Yeah.
Honestly, my big thing, because you were saying there just before we got to the spoiler break, that seeing people in this movie who we didn't necessarily know at the time but have become something. The very first scene of this movie, you're the first person we see in this movie.
All right. Well, I mean the big ones are Kristen Bell and
Anna Paquin from True Blood and the X-Men stuff, right?
Was there someone before that?
Yeah, the very first. You probably didn't recognize her, maybe, but the very first person we see in this movie is someone who went on to become the bane of our existence.
Oh no!
And the first...
Oh wait, yes, Lucy Hale.
Lucy Hale from Truth or Dare and
you're right,
Fantasy Island is in the opening scene of this movie, answering the phone call, and then the twist is, of course, after there's some stabbing and throat slashing, is that this is actually not real. This is the opening of Stab 6. Yes,
either 5 or 6. I forget.
Yeah, 6. I think it's 6,
or maybe 6. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's Anna Paquin and Kristen Bell watching Stab 6, and basically Paquin's complaining that these movies are really predictable, and you see everything coming, and then the twist here is that Kristen Bell stabs her in the stomach and says, "Did you see that coming?"
Yeah.
And then it turns out that that's actually Stab 7. So the opening of Stab 6 is actually the start of Stab 7, which opens some questions for me. Like, is Stab 6 actually a full movie, or in this universe did they release Stab 7 after Stab 5, and Stab 6 is just the opening scene to Stab 7?
Yeah, I feel like maybe like they should like if they should have given it like a different name, because like maybe like in the Stab universe, maybe I'm assuming maybe it's also kind of meta. So like in the Stab universe, maybe they have like a movie series called like Puncture or something. Like they could have done like something like that. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's like a funny joke. Like probably aren't supposed to think about it too much. But yeah, I was like trying to parse that out in my head as well. And what was kind of funny to me is like, I think in that like first opening sequence, like the way the people were talking, I was kind of like starting to roll my eyes, because I was like, oh, like what like I don't know, this dialogue just sounds like too movie like, you know what I mean? Like it's like, who really talks like this in real life and stuff. And then once they start killing each other, and then you realize like, oh no, it's a fake movie. That's like what really got me. I was like, oh okay, no, that worked perfectly well. Yeah,
and of course after the Stab 7 twist, it goes to the real world finally, and the characters who are there and get killed off. And this is one of those things where I feel like it was kind of just rushing through, because it was like, oh, we have to kill these characters off because it's the opening kill scene, rather than it being kind of natural or feeling like there was actually any suspense in it. But although, is this the one where they actually tease the garage door again? Because obviously that's one of the big kills in the first movie, where he crushes the woman crawling through the door. So it's an okay beat, but it's definitely feels like it's a bit in the rush side. But so we're introduced to all the characters after that. Cindy arrives in the town. There's ghost face masks on all the lamp posts and things like that. There's something that really bugged me. This is like a minor complaint, right? And it's not just this movie that's guilty of it, but it really stuck out to me. So Gale is living in the town with Dewey, who's now the sheriff, and he's got his deputy, Deputy Hicks, Judy Hicks, who's like making him lemon squares, and clearly he's in love with them and wants to like steal them from Gale, which is kind of a funny concept. Gale is wanting to write another book, and she's sitting there and she's got like a blank page.
I think I know what you're gonna say here.
That just says chapter 1, and she's like, okay, Gale, let's do it. Let's find myself again. And it's also this jealousy thing, because she's just seen on the TV that Cindy's written a book about her experiences, and she's doing a book tour. That's why she's back in Woodsboro. She's at the bookstore doing a signing, and Gale's okay, I'm going to write this. Okay, I'm going to start writing my first sentence, and I'm like, people who write books don't just like start writing chapter one. That's not how writing a book works. They write like an outline.
Yeah.
They have like a plan, like a breakdown of what each chapter is going to be, and then eventually they start actually writing the chapters.
Oh no, totally. I thought you were gonna mention what really threw me was the size of her font. Like,
right. Yeah.
Like when she starts typing, it's like there's like 10 letters before it goes on to the next line. I was like, Jesus.
Hey, Gail Weathers, her eyesight's not what it used to be, so she has to have the big font. Okay, that's just how it is.
So, really impressed. You wrote a 700-page book, and then you look at it like, well.
Yeah, once we condense this down, it's more like 50 pages, but that's fine. It's whatever. It's a novella. It's
yeah.
Short story. So no, we're interested in the various characters. We're interested in teenagers as well. So we meet, what's her name? The cast list is annoyingly in order of appearance rather than anything else. But Emma Roberts' character Jill Roberts, bizarrely, they let her keep her last name for some reason.
Interesting.
And Hayden Panettiere's Kirby, her best friend, who's kind of like the surprising horror buff amongst the girls, which is kind of used repeatedly throughout the film. In fact, one of my favorite moments in the movie is they kind of save the horror quiz aspect of the phone calls until late on in the film, where the guy, there's the film nerd guy who she's actually, who's got a crush on her. She's kind of actually opened up to him. She's like, hey, this is where you make your move. And they're kind of like almost measuring their horror trivia dicks with each other a little bit in a flirty way when they're watching a movie together. And the killer seemingly recreates the kill from the first movie, where the boyfriend's outside on the patio tied to the chair, and the killer's saying, hey, answer this question. And she's answering them really well because she knows her stuff. And she's like saying this, and this. And then the killer kind of asks one that's kind of like this is the thing. So the question in the first movie where they ask, like, who was the killer in Friday the 13th, that's a really good gotcha, because it's an undisputable fact that everyone thinks Jason's the killer in those movies, but in the first one, it is factually not him. It is factually Mrs. Voorhees is the killer. Now, whereas it'd be a bit more murky if it said, when did Jason first appear? Because that's still technically the first movie, right? The question that she's asked is, what movie kicked off the slasher genre? It wasn't genre, it was the slasher boom. And I thought, that's a really murky question, because I would argue that that's technically Friday the 13th, because that's the reason, or arguably Halloween, depending on your perspective, right? But really what the question is being asked is which was the first ever slasher movie, which when she says Psycho, the person, the killer says, no, wrong, Peeping Tom was earlier the same year, 1960. I thought, well, yeah, but is that really what inspired the slasher movies? Because that's the way the question was phrased. This was intentionally a grey area question, and I feel like Kirby deserves justice. Justice for Kirby. I don't think that the question was fair the way it was phrased. That's all I'm saying. But
no, I agree with that. Yeah, it's like you have to have, like, it's okay to have kind of a gotcha question, but that's the way he kind of phrased it. Yeah, like you said, it's like very murky. Like you can see like a lot of wiggle room in that. Like I feel like if it was like a test at school, you'd probably still get partial credit or something like for your answer. I think what bothered me is like, she gets the chance to do like one last question, but she just starts the question is like, what like remake
which classic horror movie was remade, and then before it even finishes the question, she lists off basically every big horror movie that's been remade in the last like 5-10 years. And it's funny that you're saying you don't like this, because I love this moment. Here's the thing. I love the idea of her like listing off everything, but I just really wanted to know what the actual question was. That's that's my pet peeve. As far as the meta stuff goes in this movie, my favorite meta moment is her just defiantly listing off every horror movie that's been remade in the last 10 years, almost as if Wes Craven's saying "F you Hollywood" for doing this. It felt really kind of like her just being like, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, Hills Have Eyes. She's naming all of them. It's great.
Yeah, I feel like, and it's funny too, because like several of those were like Wes Craven remakes. Not that he remade them, but like she mentions Last House on the Left, Nightmare on Elm Street, Hills Have Eyes.
It feels like this kind of like, as a horror fan watching this scene, having her just list them all off as an FU, I got them all. right?
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter what you were asking. I got them all, and and then of course the twist happens, or whatever. But
to be fair though, on a technical level, like again, that's not how like questions and answers work.
Yeah.
Like,
no, it doesn't work. But
you can't list everything.
It's a good.
I agree though, it is a good moment.
Yeah, it's a good moment, right? I like it. But anyway, so it is basically the
I think just another like I do think another problem with the movie that I kind of wish is it feels like they don't get to the reboot angle until kind of late in the movie. Like I feel at this point they really are kind of like hammering that stuff home, but like I don't know, it doesn't feel like it's maybe as well thought of or as like kind of clear that's what they're doing in the beginning.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's actually doing it until, because there's obviously it's like halfway through the movie they go to the cinema club thing, which happens because Gale kind of like wants to like Dewey's refusing to like offer her information because he's trying to take his job as sheriff seriously, and she wants to solve the crime, so she goes to these teenagers and says, "Hey, you give me what you've got, and I'll come and be a celebrity at your cinema club." And they're like, "What about Sydney?" And she's like, "What about Sydney?" She's getting all jealous. But they go to the cinema club meeting, and this is basically the equivalent of Randy in the first movie talking about the rules, right? This is this movie's version of that, where they explain how reboots work and how the rules are kind of meaningless now because everyone knows what they are too much, so the rules have been shattered. Like now it's just everything.
Yeah, and I feel like I kind of like these guys a lot more just because like Randy is a good character, but I just Jamie Kennedy I just find so annoying. So I mean Rory Culkin all day, man. That's easily the best Culkin.
Sure, I guess. Yeah. I don't feel too strongly on my Culkin rankings, but
I did actually enjoy him in this.
Well, I like Culkin's character. I'm not as keen on the
other
because the whole wearing the webcam on his head and like broadcasting like all the time felt really weird to me because he just randomly starts streaming things live, and then on top of that. Just like he has a lot of that movie talk where he says, "Oh, I mean, like of course I record everything. Everyone's going to do it someday. You go home and you upload to cyberspace. Like no one says cyberspace. No one says that. They just don't, right? Not
what? Yeah. Was it just too early for this? Like it feels like something maybe like this would have worked. I mean, like something like this now would be obviously very. Prevalent and stuff, but like
maybe but I think the problem with it is that, and maybe this would be fixed because people writing this now would understand how streaming works, but the fact that he just at any point just turns it on and all of a sudden he's streaming to a website randomly, like is there people just waiting for him to broadcast? Like what exactly is happening here?
Also I'm sorry, no one had this like contraption on his head. Like people would live stream, but I don't think anyone has ever had this. Like I feel like especially in school, like some teacher would be like, "Hey, take that off."
Oh sure, absolutely. People don't even like. I mean, they don't even wear a hat in school. Never mind a contraption with a camera on it. Come on.
Yeah, and I think the worst part about it though is like, all right, if you are gonna have it, like I feel like there has to be a good payoff for it. Like there is something that you could like as soon as you see it later on, okay, that's going to come into play at some point with the killer and a kill and everything, and it doesn't really do that much.
Yeah, like I mean, even if it's not in his own death, like I was kind of expecting maybe like what if after he's killed, if we don't know he's dead yet, where someone's watching his live stream and they think it's him, but it's not him, it's the killer who's actually got the camera, and you can do something fun with that, and it never really does. It's kind of weird. So they're investigating the crimes. Alison Brie's in here, which is cool. I mean, she wasn't unknown because this was like maybe after 2 seasons of Community, so I knew who she was when this came out. This wasn't like a surprise, but and she's kind of the publicist for Sydney.
Yeah, I did not remember she was in this movie at all. Like I was watching Community pretty early on, so I would have known her when I saw it, but I did not remember she was in it.
Yes, that's fair. And obviously once they find the first bodies and it becomes clear that there's the killer, Sydney ends up staying at her sister or auntie's house with young Emma Roberts, and like from here it's kind of like I felt they could have went further with the reboot stuff again, where there's a moment where Sydney comes into the bedroom and Emma Roberts' ex-boyfriend has came through the window and he leaves through the window, and it's very reminiscent of Billy in the first movie. And I almost thought they could have done more with that kind of stuff. It's kind of whatever. But here, Wes Craven is giving a shout out to Shaun of the Dead. He has 2 characters watching Shaun of the Dead, which is neat. And they have the whole kill where the one of their friends is a neighbor and they see her get killed from across the street and whatever. It's okay. And they set up the idea that maybe could it be Cindy? Because I remember watching this for the first time and thinking like, they could do the swerve here where Cindy's actually the killer. That'd be a ballsy thing to do. In this reboot, or maybe even Gail would be interesting because Gail's the one who's actually like trying to regain her fame and she feels like she's not got anything. Could she create the killings to like somehow rejuvenate her career, kind of thing? But that's what it is. The kids have like a this marathon party where they watch all the stab movies, which is where we see this stuff. Gail tries to infiltrate that, and whatever. There's comedy with the 2 cops watching the house, and they're kind of useless. Anthony Anderson does get killed quite brutally. This is probably the one kill that's memorable for me. He gets stabbed right in the forehead.
Yeah.
But again, they kind of deflate it a little bit because as he's dying, like because he's sort of alive for a little bit as he's bleeding from it, and because the cops had a conversation earlier where cops always die in movies unless you're Bruce Willis, and as he's dying, his dying words as he kills over is "F Bruce Willis" and he dies. A bit goofy.
It's all right. Yeah, like it's I don't know. Yeah, it takes you out of it a little bit, but I mean, I guess it's somewhat humorous.
Yeah, I don't know. I just it didn't quite vibe with me. So you have all this stuff. After the party gets broken up though, because Gail gets stabbed. The killer like stabs on the shoulder, but doesn't kill her. She gets taken off to hospital. First, so she got the Dewey treatment because Dewey kept getting injured in the past movies and get taken to hospital. So now it's her turn to be the one who gets injured. But our kid characters all end up at Kirby's house, which is where a lot of the action actually takes place. That's where the Kirby scene happens, where she does all the questions. It's where the camera dude dies. It's where all that stuff. I'm kind of glossing over some of the kills because I don't necessarily think a lot of them are that memorable or kind of stick out.
Yeah, again, they mostly just come down to like stabbing and like I mean, some of them are kind of gory, like and do get to be pretty bloody, but again, there isn't much that like sticks out of it. I guess maybe if you want to say with Alison Brie's character, like I guess this wouldn't be her actual death, but when they do throw her body like onto the top of the truck or whatever, like that kind of sticks out in my head a little bit, but as far as the actual like kills themselves, there isn't really. Yeah,
Alison Brie's death actually is kind of the only one that feels like a horror movie in the sense that she's kind of stalked into the car park and she's.
I kind of like that section. Like it's cool. Like it is like a little. I mean, you have to give it some like leeway just because like I was like, all right, like where is this killer going? Like it seems like he's on the hood of the car and then all of a sudden like vanish. But I don't know. I think like it was done well.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. So, but obviously, the Sydney is on the run to get there because she's worried about her because the killer came to the house. Emma Roberts' mother gets killed through the door when they're trying to like barricade themselves in. They end up, Sydney ends up at the house, and the big reveal, of course, after the Culkin obviously is revealed to be a killer because he gets up out the chair and stabs Kirby. And he's like, well, after 4 years of being in the same classes together, then now you notice me? And then it turns out, of course, the big reveal is that Emma Roberts is the other killer. And her motivation in the film is that basically she's always been kind of under the shadow because of like who her cousin is. And that she actually wants to be the lone survivor, the famous lone survivor, to get the fame and the success that Sydney has. So she's basically done a reboot, and that's this is where the meta stuff, where this is a reboot essentially, really comes into it. And I kind of, I do love that idea. And honestly, she actually, she stabs after explaining what her plan is. She stabs Sydney, and it looks like Sydney may actually be dying. And I knew in the back of my head that we're probably going to like somehow like pull her out of it, but we get this sequence here because she kills the other killer. She kills Culkin because she wants to be the lone survivor. So she betrays him, which is, I guess on point for someone who's set up this whole maniacal plan to be famous. But
she also shoots her ex in the dick.
She does. She shoots her ex in the dick because he comes out of the closet just like Sydney's dad did in the first one, all tied up. I thought he was a bad actor, actually. Every scene with him, the ex-boyfriend, I thought was pretty rough.
Yeah, it's not great.
But I loved this. See, after she seemingly kills Sydney, I love this like sequence where she goes around and like basically sets up the crime scene. She she uses like the ex-boyfriend's hand to scratch her face for DNA evidence and rip out her hair, and then she throws herself into a mirror and then through a glass table and then stabs herself in the sort of shoulder and like admittedly though, the amount of time it's taken the police to get here from when we know Dewey found out about the location is a bit far. Because Woodsboro's not a big town. It's never felt like a big town, so it's a bit hard to swallow that part.
To the point where I think, she calls him or whatever and says she's at like Kirby's place and he automatically knows the address. Like, that was a bit of a stretch. Yeah. But no, I absolutely love this whole kind of end sequence here. And, yeah, like I was actually like laughing out loud. Like it's pretty like funny, like all the things she's doing to hurt herself. And...
Yeah, it's almost like comically, like darkly funny. As much as Scream 1 is definitely the better movie, I actually think this is my favorite motivation for any of the killers.
Oh, totally, yeah.
Mainly because the idea of her actually trying to make a reboot, so she can be the new Sydney and be famous like the original version, is actually kind of like it works on a meta level that's like maybe the most genius meta level trick that Scream's ever pulled.
I mean, I think this is the first movie that like actually aside from the first one, but like the killer's motivations are just so eye-rolly to me in 2 and 3. Like this is the first time where I feel like, oh no, I'm actually buying why the character is doing this. And admittedly, it's still like a big swing, to say,
oh, it's over the top for sure, but
it's also it's just like, I don't know, so much easier to swallow for me than like just like kind of adding on all this extra backstory to all this crap that we didn't need. Like I really like it.
Yeah, it's also not only is it not adding backstory, but it's also she's jealous of Sydney not because of anything from her past. It is the past now, but she's jealous of Sydney because of the story of Scream, which is why we all like Scream and why Scream's a big deal to us. So it oddly kind of works with the whole meta reboot thing, and it just it feels like, rather than have the motivation be something they're retconning into Sydney or Sydney's mother's past, as is the case in Scream 3, it's something that it's because of the first movie. It's because of Scream. Like that's what the motivation is, and that's something that doesn't feel cheap because that's the first movie is why we like the franchise. It's why we like Scream. It's why it's good. So it completely works and makes sense and ties into everything in that sense. And she even positions herself lying down, looking at Sydney in this sort of like mirror image kind of shot. I thought that stuff was kind of genius and definitely my favorite part of the whole movie. And there was that thing in the back of my head. I'm like, you know what? They're going to like find a way to have her lose still. But if they actually let her win, if this was the end of the movie, like a dark ending where it cut to like credits, like don't get me wrong, the eventual Scream 5 would have to be very different because obviously they would have the villain winning here. But if they actually had the villain win at the end of this, I would have like given them so much credit. Instead, we have to have the bit where they go to the hospital and she finds out Sydney's actually still alive. She's in ICU, which by the way, when she goes to Sydney to kill her, like Sydney's awake and talking to her. Dewey describes her as touch and go. Right, where she might not survive. When she goes to see her, she's talking, she's up, she's fighting back. I'm like, that's not touch and go. She's all right, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're giving everyone like a lot of leeway in this end here. Like, I mean, just the idea that like, I kept thinking like, is there no one else in this hospital? Like, there'd be like so much commotion, like doctors and security guards and everything would. I mean, first of all, you would think a like victim or whatever like this would probably have cops watching them already, but I don't know, maybe so much crazy stuff has happened, but it's a little unbelievable.
I mean, they think the killers are dead, so I suppose they're not worried as much about security, but sure. Like the entire ending, the actual conflict in the hospital room because first of all, this was one of the problems with Emma Roberts' whole thing with what's her name? I keep forgetting her actual character's name. Jill is that when she goes to kill
Jill sandwich.
You're almost a Jill sandwich. But see when she goes to kill Sydney in the hospital because she's like, I need to finish the job. I'm like, how are you, like, you had this whole plan to get away with it and make it look like you were the lone survivor. Like, how does like someone strangling Sydney in hospital after the fact, how is that not going to look suspicious? Like, how are you not going to be found out at this point?
Oh no, totally. Yeah, like there's
she's not thinking straight. But the whole thing's really silly though. There's a whole thing where Gail comes in, then Dewey comes in. Sydney eventually kills Jill with the defibrillator, but it has this really like silly comical build up where Gail's like walking towards us saying, "Hey, like, you want to write a book together?" Because that's one of the things she said to Dewey when she was in the hospital bed. And it's what makes Dewey and Gail realize that she's probably the villain, is because, like, how could she know that Gail was also stabbed in the shoulder? Dun dun dun. Right? Which, by the way, seriously, Jill, why are you saying so much? In case you accidentally say something you shouldn't know, keep your mouth shut.
It's I mean, it's kind of a leap because it's like, all right, you have this like genius level intellect where you can like plot this entire thing and carry it out to fruition, but then you're also not smart enough where you make like a very clear mistake like this at the end.
Yeah, like, it's just a bit much. But Gail's walking towards, she's like, "Okay, can I have one final word before you shoot me?" She's like, "Okay, what is it? Please help." It's like, "No, clear." And then suddenly, like, you know, blasts her with the defibrillator, and I'm like, that was really cheesy. And then there's a whole thing here with Deputy Hicks is like in here, right? And she gets shot at one point, and after they take her down, after they take Jill down, Deputy Hicks like jumps up from the bed, behind the bed, and says, "I'm fine." She rips open her shirt and she's like, "Hey, I've got a, wear the vest, save your chest." And then she faints again in a sort of really comedy style pratfall, and it's just kind of like, what is this tone? Like, why is there these stupid bits of comedy here? I don't know. It was really weird.
It's weird because there's some of it worked for me, some of it didn't. Like, the bulletproof vest thing. Like, I mean, maybe it would have worked if it had been a callback to something earlier in the movie, because that's what it kind of feels like. Like, you know, maybe someone would have said that line earlier or something, but it's just kind of out of place here. I do actually kind of like the defibrillator thing. Like, I don't know. I think it's cheesy and over the top, but I liked it. And I love Sydney's last line or whatever, where she says, like, "You forgot the one rule about remakes," or something like that. And it's like, what? And she's like, you know, don't F with the original.
I don't know. I wasn't super into that line. I like the sentiment.
Oh, I loved it.
I like the sentiment, but I didn't like the line.
Honestly, I loved it. I think it was kind of cool. Is it like cheesy and over the top? Sure. Yeah. But I like it.
I just imagine that Jill won this though and killed like everyone who came out of the room, which because we get to a point because she beats up Dewey with like a bedpan over his head, right? So we get to this point where
those things must be tough.
There's like 4 people in the room that she's got like either lying down or wounded, and I'm like, this teenage girl is taking on 4 people who most of whom expected her to be like lethal and hostile. I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like that does kind of play off like they established in the first movie that like the killer is kind of unstoppable. You know what I mean?
Sure,
like, I feel like it's kind of in line with it, but yeah, it's
okay. Yeah, okay. The meta narrative kind of lends itself to it, I suppose. But imagine she wins though, and she's still trying to go with this "I'm the lone survivor" thing. Like, what happened in this room? Like, you've shot. Because it's at a point where she's about to shoot Gail. She's going to shoot Sydney. She's beaten Dewey to death with a bed, but not really. I mean, she's still alive, but you know, she'd have to finish the job because he knows who she is and what she's done. I'm like, there's going to be 4 people in this room, probably all dead from bullet wounds, and you've survived. Like, how do you explain that?
Like, I mean, I guess like the only thing you can give it is maybe at this point she's so crazy or on edge or whatever that she's not thinking straight. But again, that kind of like doesn't really jive with like the cold, calculated killer, you know, she was earlier.
I mean, I'll stand by it. I think that Cindy should be dead and that Jill gets away with this. And I think, I don't know what that says about reboots and whatever. Like, maybe that says like, no, it literally does ruin the original because now the original's dead and gone. Like, I don't know, some really depressing message at the end.
Like, so the way I was kind of thinking about it, and if this is going to what you were saying earlier when you're saying like, you know, it doesn't feel like there's like a main character. Like, I mean, maybe I'm reaching too much or giving it too much credit, but like, it kind of feels like there's two movies at play here, which is like the, you know, real life, kind of like, you know, the realistic movie that we're supposed to kind of be taking in, that, you know, these are actual characters in which case I feel like, Sydney is still the main character, but then the meta movie aspect of it is that there's also like a reboot happening, which is trying to take over. So it kind of seems like, like Sydney and Jill are supposed to be like the main characters, but it's like it's kind of like the actual movie fighting the meta movie, you know what I mean, where like the reboot version is trying to take over the main character, which like it doesn't really help, because like you don't get like a ton of them, like, so
it's kind of a weird thing, because I feel like what they should have done is dialed down the legacy characters. Still have Dewey and Gale in that, but I don't think Gale should have had a plot try to solve the crime. I mean, maybe she's doing that in the background, but I feel like it should have focused on the young kids, have them kind of have a reboot of the original movie. Now, admittedly, I don't know how you follow Jill as much as you followed Sydney in the original, in the sense that, because that's what I'm saying, it doesn't feel like as a protagonist, because it doesn't really follow any one person that much, but I don't know how you follow Jill like you do Sydney in the original, and not like have it be weird that she's one of the killers, because it would be kind of hard to like. I mean, it's not impossible. Movies have definitely pulled the main character is actually the killer twist. Like, that's happened before, but I feel like that may be difficult. But that would be, I think, what would work is that if you make it more focused on just being the reboot, with the old characters being around and like coming into certain scenes, but not following them on their own right, just to make it a bit more focused, and then you can still do all the reboot stuff at the end. All this, it would maybe make the reboot stuff feel more thematically like there the whole time, because that's one of the things we said, obviously, is that it feels like the reboot stuff is kind of introduced halfway through and then doesn't really kick into a proper full gear until, the last like 20-30 minutes, where it really goes nuts. So, but no, the reveal of the killers, and then like all of Emma Roberts' plan and her carrying it out afterwards, is my favorite part of the movie. I love that part of the movie.
Totally.
I think the rest of the movie is a little bit unfocused and jumbling too many characters for me to really get into it. It's easy enough to watch though, and I do like that it's back in the old town again, rather than the new locations from 2 and 3. So there's things to like. There's a lot of things to also not like. I would probably
it's not perfect by any means, like, but I think maybe it just helps like that. Yeah, like a lot of these characters, and like I think like the new characters and the old, like, maybe it's not best to have everyone kind of meshing so much, but like I think they're at least enjoyable enough that I don't really mind following their exploits and stuff.
At
least like in terms of like the main characters, like stuff like the cops you could easily lose, and that kind of thing.
I think I will say it's probably the best sequel still. I think there's kind of a weird thing with this and 2, where I think 2 is better made. I think the 2 still is still a horror movie. Wes Craven still try to be suspenseful. Think of scenes where like they're trying to climb out the car or something like that. There's a lot of stuff in 2 where it's actually paced like a horror movie, and I think that's what this is missing. I think the direction in this feels a bit more haphazard, but maybe because Wes Craven's throwing that in. I don't know, but this one does feel more like the original, in the sense that we're back in the town. It feels like it's being back to its meta self, even if it's maybe going a bit too comedy with it. So I almost think the perfect sequel to Scream is something between 2 and 4, where if you somehow mix the quality of filmmaking from 2 with the actual concepts of 4, you probably get your best Scream sequel that way. But I'd probably say I like 4 overall more than 2. For sure.
Yeah, for me, it's really not a contest. I just really, man, the like, not that there aren't good parts at 2, but I think by the end I just really wasn't feeling it.
Four's more fun, but I think 2's a better directed movie for sure.
Sure.
So I think 4 is watchable. I don't think it's like. I don't know if I'd even say it's a good movie per se, but it's got good ideas and it's got good elements, and I'd say it's the best of the sequels. But Scream 1 still stands head and shoulders above this, and
sure,
it's just not even interesting being a horror movie anymore, which is kind of weird to me. Anytime it's doing a horror movie thing in this film, it feels like it's just sort of going through the motions because we have to have horror stuff. But the movie is so attached to like doing stuff with Gale and Dewey and Sydney that I feel like they're actually stealing time away from the more interesting characters in this one. So I'm fascinated to see what 5's going to do. and see what that is. They're just announcing the casting for it just now with these actors coming back. So I feel like we won't see this until probably another 2 or 3 years, especially given the pandemic and everything. Yeah. But so
yeah, I mean, I'm certainly intrigued. I don't know if I want to say I'm super looking forward to it. I'm not crazy about like the stuff those Ready or Not people like have done.
You mean Ready or Not?
Yeah. Which again, it's not necessarily bad. Like I think at the very least, I'm sure they'll be able to make a capable movie that's like at least a fun watch or whatever. But I don't know if I'm necessarily expecting something like great or amazing.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but yeah, I still really think this is fun. I mean, I do agree that sure there are plenty of faults you can easily see, and like I agree. Yeah, maybe like the horror elements aren't there as much as they should be, but I don't know. It still works for me though.
I think it's still the best sequels because the best concepts and ideas of any of the sequels. I'll say that as well. I think 2 should have went more into this as a sequel satire, and this is trying to be a reboot satire. I think both of them could have went further than they did, but those are interesting ideas. 3 suffers from just being like, oh, it's a trilogy satire, but it didn't work.
But like, what is even like the I don't know, like what are even like the trilogy tropes? Like, what would you cover in that's not covered already in like a sequel movie? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's just an excuse for them to be like, oh no, like trilogy, so it's gonna be over the top and can't be even more so or whatever. But yeah, it does not work for me.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure what the satire of 5 is going to be. Like,
well, that's what I'm kind of interested in. Like, is it going to be, because like every movie feels like it has like a specific angle, like whether or not, like you were just saying, that it's necessarily like achieves what it's setting out to do. Like, yeah, maybe it's not a perfect sequel satire, and this wasn't a perfect reboot satire, but at least they do have that idea for them. Like, yeah, I don't know what the idea for 5 is going to be. Like, 5th movie satire.
I mean, is 5 the one that does the thing where it goes back to the originals again? It's kind of like how Halloween went back to being a sequel to the original, so it's back to being more about the main characters again. But I'm worried at that point. They're like, what do they do for the story though? Like, if they bring up more of Maureen Prescott, I swear, I don't want to hear anything about Maureen Prescott.
I mean, I wonder if they are just going to like, maybe they just don't have a specific angle. They're just going to try to make it like, just like a, regular slasher movie, which I mean, honestly, I mean, could be fine. Like, I mean, for the franchise, it has that meta nature to it that you feel like you want something specific, but I don't know, maybe they can deliver just an okay movie. I am interested to see what the angle is going to be, what they're going to be satirizing specifically. But we'll see. I suppose we're at the point that we're going to rate the movie here. So, Tim, what are you rating Scream for? I'm gonna give it a 7.5. Actually, enjoyed it quite a bit. It has flaws, for sure. Like, I think the big thing for me is like, I think I'll disagree with you a little bit where you're saying that the horror isn't as good. I think there was actually some like good horror elements to it. Like I do agree that the kills aren't great. I think that's the big problem. I could have used some better stuff, but I think there were like some suspenseful moments. Like, I mean, Alison Brie's like scene, I think like it was like a pretty good like tense little moment, and but yeah, definitely could have used more of it. But I mean, I think it's fun. Has some interesting ideas. Maybe doesn't necessarily achieve everything, but I don't know. Has overall had a good time with it. Okay. I'm going to go with a straight 6 out of 10. I feel like the film has a lot of good ideas, and it pulls off some of them to an extent, but is a little bit jumbled. It does have a good cast, I will say that. There's a lot of good cast members in here. That's just the thing. I would have loved to see more of Jill and more of Kirby. I think they're actually quite interesting characters. They're fun to be around. Admittedly, Jill more so after the reveal, but Kirby was usually entertaining. I think they're a good foursome, like them and the two like film guys. Like, sure, admittedly, the live streaming guy isn't that interesting, but I guess he would just be there anyway, But yeah, I like them as a group. Would have been nice to see more of them.
Yeah. So very watchable, and I do like. I like the almost ending a lot, but the actual ending not so much. So, is what it is. That is Scream 4. If you made it this far in the video version on YouTube, please put the word reboot into the comments. I'm going to make Tim do his pose for the thumbnail. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, pose. Very
I'm
good.
on my phone.
Very good.
One thing I did think was kind of unbelievable in this is how often people answer their phones. Like, like who answers their phone nowadays? Like,
sure. I did kind of like how. This is funny because this came out in 2011. So it's quite in the early days of smartphones. But I love that there's an app for the voice.
Oh yeah.
Everyone can do the voice if they want, which is that's pretty amusing. I'm just going to say it. It just shows how quickly the idea of having apps for things took off once the iPhone was a thing.
Yeah.
So, which is maybe something else that they could have even explored more of, was the idea that, Scream was the franchise about the killer phoning the victim. Now everyone's got smartphones. Like, they could have went even further with that.
Yeah, it seems like there's a missed opportunity there where you could, because it's the phone was like, it's the first movie using the phone so much that's like a big piece of technology, and then the phone has evolved to this point where it's like, yeah, we have smartphones and those have apps and those are connected to the internet, and maybe that kind of stuff wasn't as big back then, but it was around enough that you could have probably played around with it more.
Yeah, I don't know, just something food for thought, I guess. Maybe Stream 5 will take the Halloween Resurrection route, and there'll be a full-on Twitch stream of the whole thing, and
oh, God.
People will be watching, and I don't know, the whole wonder. But hey, so that is Stream 4, and you can of course let us know what you thought of the movie in the comments. You can like and subscribe. All those things are super important, as we said earlier on, as is supporting us over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV financially. If you want to, you get some bonuses. Go and have a look-see. Guys on Twitter at Streams Midnight for updates and random shenanigans from both of us. But otherwise, that is us. Hopefully you're enjoying the Oktoberthon, and I highly doubt that this is the last one of the month, so there'll be more to come. So look forward to it. And so thank you very much for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, guys, and we will see you next time.